back into my university days where I kicked off as the typical door-to-door Tupperware knives salesman. It's like golf. If you have a terrible hole, go into the next one, you have a whole nother opportunity to redeem yourself. Or you have a great hole, you get to go and replicate that. It's the same thing with sales. You have a bad day, you can improve it the following day.
Welcome to the ISP podcast, where we speak to salespeople about their journeys to help you demystify the profession. Today, we are joined by Brett Davies, Director of Revenue at Pebble and aspiring scratch golfer. Brett, thank you for joining me. Did you want to tell the audience a little bit more about you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. And those aspirations of being a scratch golfer are quite far out, but you gotta start somewhere, right?
Indeed.
I've been in and around sales for well over 20 years, kind of spanning back into my university days where I kicked off as the, typical door-to-door Tupperware knives salesman. That was kind of my first taste of sales in general. But ever since then, every role I've held has been associated with growth and with sales in particular. So I started my career in the financial services sector, working with a larger bank back in California. Was there for about 7 years. I held a range of roles spanning from individual contributors all the way up to managing multiple teams, multiple managers. I decided then to branch off from the financial world and go into the private sector, where I actually joined a fitness company that was based in the Bay Area, and went in as a sales and operations director, helped that company scale the locations throughout California and then down into Mexico as well. So I was part of building out the repeatable playbooks, both operationally and sales. Then decided to pursue my master's. So I came out to the UK, fell in love with the weather, as anybody would, and have been here for 7 years now. And since graduating from the MBA, I have held leadership roles within sales and customer experience. My current role is Director of Revenue at Pebble. I oversee the entire revenue cycle. So that entails marketing, the sales force, implementation, customer experience, and operations. So kind of the full gamut. But that's a little bit of my background. I think obviously the purpose of this conversation is to talk about why I got involved in the profession. Yeah. And I think to start, I didn't always view sales as a profession. If anything, actually, I probably fell into that category of thinking sales was a dirty word earlier on in my career. And, I went as far as calling myself, business development, business acquisitions, kind of trying to avoid the word sales. But the more involved I got and the more mature I got throughout the course of my career in sales, started to wear more of like a badge of honor. Because I felt like the more I learned, there was a stark difference between stereotypical sales and viewing sales as a profession. And there's stark differences between the two, which I know we'll get into in a little bit. But I think what has kept me going within sales, it is a blend of things, but it's primarily being in a position to add value to a business or add value to a consumer in a variety of different ways. I want to be associated with a company that is in a position to add that value, and more specifically, leading a team that kind of inspires that change and ultimately creates that value, right? And is very value driven. It's kind of what gets me out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned there you have led high performing sales teams across various stages of their growth journey and from sort of a variety of industries. Mm-hmm. What's made you the proudest in your leadership journey so far?
I'll probably say there's two things. I've been in a position to kind of join companies at more early stages. And when you are part of the sales organization within that department or within that company, you get to see the user base grow, meaning you get to see it go kind of essentially, actually in the case of Pebble, literally zero, all the way up to, north of 600 businesses that we're now servicing. And to kind of watch that growth, happen is very rewarding, I would say. But more than that, I always take pride in helping people navigate their careers, ideally keeping them within sales.
Yeah.
But if not, being able to, convert them into a long-term sales professional, giving them the coaching and the tools, and the ability to sell it in different ways. And what I mean by that is, regardless of where you sit in an organization, there's always going to be an element of selling. So I think the best way to go about learning that is obviously starting off with a sales role, right? And but let's say you advance into operations, there's going to have to be an element of selling to a degree of either getting, a project pushed forward, or, something that you want to have prioritized over someone else that has a different, opinion. And it kind of all starts with the sales aspect. So I'd probably say I'm most proud about being able to influence people's careers, and whether, again, that stays within sales, or putting them in a position to take on roles and responsibilities that might be more suitable for what they want longer term.
I love that. It's that idea of influencing growth in either the customer or the team,
Exactly.
which is really, really sort of fulfilling goal. Now you touched on this idea of there being a stigma surrounding the word sales. For most people, it does tend to send a bit of a shiver down their spine. I think the latest HubSpot research found that only 3% of people see salespeople as trustworthy. There's some Miller Heiman studies that found that only 23% of buyers see salespeople as trusted advisors.
Yeah.
And I think what we've seen, as you mentioned, is that attempt to hide sales, whether it be by calling yourself a business development rep, whether it's an account executive, all these very creative names. But I guess initially, why do you think that sales does get a bad rep still? And what do we need to do as a profession, as leaders, as individual salespersons, people, to actually shift that narrative?
Yeah. I think there's a few reasons. I think by and large, the word sales has a lot of negative connotation associated with it based on historic stereotypes, right? I bet if we were to say on this call, on this podcast, and put it out there to the group, draw your stereotypical salesperson, I'm willing to bet they are kind of, there's no disrespect to any industry, but I'm pretty sure everybody can kind of picture who they would think of it. Someone slick back hair, big watch, kind of in your face, clearly looking out for their own interest. I think that image, unfortunately, has just kind of continued to exist. So I think by and large, there has been, I think, unfortunately for the profession, there have been a lot of people that get into sales, I think, for the wrong reasons. And with that, it inspires, inappropriate behaviors. It can, allow, maybe put it in their minds it's okay to cut a corner because they're more focused on the target than they are for the bettering someone's situation. Like I said, adding value is the long-term goal of what a sales professional wants to be focusing on. But I think with, pressures of targets, coming from senior leaders, there's just that approach to the sales process that I think may have been more aggressive historically than probably what we're starting to see. Now, I think that almost regardless of any industry that you're selling in, there are more options now than ever before, right? And I think buyers by and large have kind of built up the stigma against the salesperson. So if at any point in that journey, they feel like they are being pushed down a path that they aren't ready for, they are probably going to be walking away from that transaction and probably going with a competitor who might not be as forceful. So I do think that will take time. I think it's like a propeller spinning in, one direction. This, the sales profession is probably one of the oldest in the world, right? But I think it is going towards the right direction. And I also think that because it has a negative connotation with it, it has probably deterred a lot of people entering the profession. And I think the people that are now trying to stick with it, or the ones that are looking to enter it now, are taking that longer term approach. It's not so finite. It is more infinite in the sense of they want to get involved with an organization to help them grow. And obviously with that comes, financial rewards and everything else, but it's not the sole reason they're getting involved, right? They're getting involved at stages where it's an exciting opportunity. The business has a good, career plan, or they know that they can come in as salesperson number one and really get this thing off the ground. Yeah. And so I do think that, in the not too distant future, sales will have a less negative connotation associated with it. But like anything, it will take some time. So yeah. I think I'll summarize that answer of, I think sales for the longest time was quite transactional, quite forceful, and people, sales reps were selling things that that customer may not have needed. Yeah. Whereas now the focus is more on the value creation, being a good listener, making the right suggestions, even if it isn't your product. I think we're starting to see a shift in that selling behavior.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that that misalignment between seller and buyer, and that the wedge that was created, the shift in buyer behaviors have then sort of catalyzed that change in sales behaviors and sales approaches to be more consultative rather than just transactional, as you said. And you've teed up my next question perfectly there, Brett. What is the difference in your eyes between someone who does sales and someone that really, truly approaches it as a profession?
Mm-hmm. I think someone who comes in and just does sales is probably one that is looking to make a commission, right? And one that is more focused on transactions, and one that is more focused on impressing people that might be more senior than them, rather than a sales professional who will come in, fully understand the product or service that they're offering, do more research on what their ICP looks like, what impact can this product or service have within that space, and then start to work on ways to position the value that that product or service can drive. A salesperson won't do that. A salesperson will come in and say, what's my target? And I'm going to make sure it gets done. And even the problem with that is, in some cases, obviously, you will force a square peg down a round hole, right? And it will have negative side effects for the business, causing more work for people later on down the chain. The negatives ultimately will outweigh the positive. The negatives will outweigh the positives of that quick transaction. So I would say that a salesperson doesn't look at the long game. They come in and just say, I need to hit a target. I don't care how I get them to say yes, but I will get them to say yes. Yeah. Whereas the sales professional will take more time to ask more questions, understand that cycle might be a little bit longer because, they don't want to force them down into a situation that eventually will have to be recoiled. Yeah. And they are taking a more ethical approach around doing their due diligence to ensure that their product or service is the right fit for that business or that individual.
Yeah. It's such a great point. And I saw a stat that wasn't necessarily directly related, but it really got me thinking. It was along the lines of, and I can't remember the source, and I probably will butcher this, but it was along the lines of 10 minutes of preparation ends up saving you 25 minutes of execution. And it's what I took away from it is, one, it's really important to do your homework before that call so that when you're on the call, it's really productive. But equally, when you are on that call, it's so important to do the deep discovery, really, truly understand your buyer, their situation, their current scenario, the desired state, so that you can actually end up speeding up the sales process because you've slowed down to speed up, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. And one thing I'm always talking to our team about is, always put yourself in the buyer's position, right? I mean, we aren't the first person that's calling them. It is a big decision for them to make. And our job is to understand any pain points that they may have, any challenges they're experiencing as a business. And then throughout listening to those answers, try to think through ways in which our product can help them solve that pain or address that challenge, right? And yeah, it does take a longer time. So yeah, I completely agree. I think doing a little bit more legwork at the forefront saves you a ton of time in the long run with higher quality opportunities.
Yeah. In terms of that distinction between the salesperson and the sales professional, why is that distinction so important? One, for the business and the culture, but also for the buyers.
Again, going back to viewing a sale either as an initial step towards building a relationship, or viewing it as a transaction. And I think from a buyer's perspective, if I feels like I'm a transaction, yeah, okay, they make me feel warm and fuzzy right now, but I get the sense that as soon as this contract is signed, they're off to the next thing. It's probably not going to sit very well with me. Whereas again, I think there's a different mindset associated with viewing that value creation as your priority. So I would probably say that as a buyer, someone that is trying to just get me off the phone and get me to sign a contract isn't going to sit well with me. Whereas if someone, let's say they can tell I'm apprehensive or if I have concerns, they're first all asking what my concerns are, getting me to be more forthcoming around why I'm not looking to make a decision then and there. But even if I'm not, then it's like, that's completely understandable. This is a big, highly considered purchase. So what I'll do is I'll provide more information via an email, and then I'll look to follow up with you at a later date. Yeah. So I just kind of feel like there's that element of reduced pressure from a sales professional versus a salesperson.
Yeah. Is the contract being signed viewed as the finish line or the start line? Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
In terms of sales organizations, obviously sales is a highly scrutinized, very high pressure environment in most cases. What's the danger for leaders that treat sales and salespeople as purely a numbers game rather than a human craft?
Quality is the one way I would summarize that.
Yeah.
I've been part of organizations and teams where it just did not matter if that person churned 3 days later. And I never appreciated that. Like the whole purpose of, being in that position, being a thought leader in that relationship between a seller and a buyer, it's your responsibility to ensure that, like you said, once the contract is signed, that's just the start of it, right? It's not the end game. I think in some cases, if you put too much emphasis on those numbers, people will hit those numbers, right? Like I've never been a big advocate of, paying super close attention to call volumes day in, day out, because I can guarantee you that if I say you have to hit 50 calls, they will hit 50 calls. They probably called their grandmother 30 times, but they hit their 50 calls. And the kind of the same thing goes with that mentality of a sale is if you put that, the pressure on, don't care where it comes from, don't care how it gets done, but it needs to get done. People will figure out a way to get it done. And they do that by continuously cutting corners, which ultimately creates a backlog of additional legwork for the organization, which slows down growth, which completely deters the purpose of a sales organization in the first place. So it's a dominoes effect. Yeah. So I think over prioritizing unit growth versus quality of those units is completely detrimental, and I've seen it on multiple occasions, and it has never worked out well. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's when those sort of lag measures are put in place, rather than focusing on the high impact activities or the leading indicators, what's going to drive us closer to the real high impact. Yeah, it's that perspective, right? And it has.
I think too in those scenarios is, might be fortunate in my situation. The last several companies I've worked at, we've been on a smaller scale. We're not a, big juggernaut of I'll just say a bank. So that's where I started.
Yeah.
But bring your team in when you're talking about, the targets, when you're talking about the productivity matrix, make sure that they're bought into it and really push them before they actually give that green light. That are they actually bought into it? Because at the end of the day, they're saying, yeah, okay, I can get, you know, 200 sales this month, no problem. Okay, well, how's that going to happen? What is the level of activity that you realistically need in order to do that? If you actually give me an algorithm that shows that you aren't going to be pushing yourself to burnout, because again, that's not something that I want from my sales reps.
Yeah.
You know, that it makes sense, that's fine, but you will be signing off on this. So I think getting them involved to give me as the leader who's not always on the front lines, you know, real insights to what's possible and what's not. Obviously, as a leader, it's my job to stretch, right? To push and to ensure that we are seeing the growth numbers. I'm not going to have a team that just kind of can hit targets without any effort. So I'm definitely not saying that. But I also don't want to put a target that is so, you know, unrealistic in front of them that halfway through the month, they know they're not going to hit it. Their energy levels completely drop. Their mindset is not where you need it to be. And then again, you're kind of back into that position of, you know, playing damage control, right? So getting them involved as early as you can, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I think that sort of accountability that comes with from the buy-in, and as well the feeling of having your feedback being valued, as well, it really drives engagement
100%.
from the team. So I love that. I love that. On that point of culture, I do want to jump ahead and dive a little bit deeper on that piece. Before I go there, I do have a bit of a palate cleanser of a question for you. So if you weren't working in sales, and I think I know the answer to this, but if you weren't working in sales, what other profession do you think that you would be drawn to, and why?
Is your answer going to be a subpar golfer? Is that?
I wasn't going to add the subpar, but
In all honesty, now I've thought a lot about this in the past, and I do think it would have to be something golf related or something fitness related. And the reasons why, and I think it ties my character nicely to why I think I've loved sales so much. It's never ending, right? And I think there's no end point to how well you can play golf. There's no perfect round. There's no, you know, there's always going to be hiccups along the way. There's going to be frustrations. How do you manage those frustrations? How do you manage those failures? And as cliche as it sounds, I think that's always attracted me to the sport of golf. You know, I started at an early age, but like I've always liked that, you know, if you have a terrible hole, you're going to the next one, you have a whole nother, you know, opportunity to redeem yourself. Or you have you know, a great hole, you get to go and replicate that. It's the same thing with sales. You have a bad day, you can improve it the following day. You have a great day, you can, you know, mirror that yet again. Fitness is quite similar, I would say. You know, it's a never ending game. You can never be in perfect shape. You can always play around with different workout routines, and it keeps going no matter what. And so I'd say either golf or fitness for those reasons.
yeah, I love that. It's that sort of resilience, the learnings that come from the good and the bad, and that idea of continuous improvement, which is great. I do want to go a little bit deeper into leadership, into culture. The reason being is that if we do want sales to be seen as a profession, it does have to look and feel like one. And that starts from sort of inside out. And it starts with leadership more often than not. So what type of culture do you aim to build within your sales teams?
I mean, outside of the office being high performing, you know, I think I like to build a culture of accountability and buy-in, and everybody that is there showing up not only for themselves but also for their team, knowing that their individual performance has a knock-on effect on the team's performance. I do try to put as much emphasis as I can on, you know, why it is they're doing what they're doing, and not just show up and hit the number. It's we as Pebble are trying to achieve this. Your role in order for us to get there is this. Do you have the tools and the resources and the coaching, the enablement in order to get that done? If the answer is no, then the onus is on me to ensure that I get that to them. If it's yes, then the onus is on me to ensure that I hold them accountable to achieving it. So the culture that I like is it's high performing, but also keep in mind that sales is fun. right? I mean, what other jobs can you actually go and speak to people? And yes, it's a losing game, and you're more often than not going to get a no.
Yeah.
But it's an actual fun profession. You get to have really fun conversations. You get to ask really, interesting questions to learn more about someone's livelihood, about their business, how they got involved in it. And not every role allows you the opportunity to do that. So making sure that it stays light, right? I think mindset's a big thing when it comes to sales. And I think the only way that you can kind of inspire that right mindset is if, people are having fun doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes those really difficult days that much easier if one, you're really bought in and you can see what the knock-on effects of your activity are. But equally, if you can have a bit of fun with it, right? There's no set formula that works over and over. So it's all about sort of testing, optimizing, figuring out what works, which is great.
To your point, is as a leader, right? It is our job to keep it fun and to keep it light. So if someone is on a downward trajectory, a little bit of a tailspin performance-wise, which as a salesperson, every single person will go through. Don't care how good you are, you will go through periods that it doesn't fall your way. And as a leader, you kind of have to have mechanisms in place to address that and make them feel confident that this is controllable. It's like the performance can be within their control if these things are changed, and not getting down on them just for that, right? Keeping them encouraged along the way.
Yeah, indeed. And we spoke about how sales is an entry point to so many different career pathways, whether that is progression throughout the sales organization, whether that is then pivoting into another sort of department, another function where you can sort of transfer your skills that you've learned. But how do you encourage people to see sales as a career rather than just purely a stepping stone?
I think it just comes back to what do they want to achieve long term in their career, regardless of industry. Like, fast forward on a whiteboard, what's an ideal position that you want to be in? I think more often than not, as I start to jot that down, especially if they're more, I would say social, but that's becoming less relevant, I would say, is kind of tying everything they can do in a sales role to get them closer to whatever that, is written down on that whiteboard.
Yeah.
But I think if I were to go more broad and let's say speaking to multiple individuals, again, it's about creating the excitement about the impact you can have on people that you speak to directly, right? Whether you're selling a gym membership, a checking account, a software, you are in a very, powerful position to influence somebody to really achieve better results, and I think if that doesn't get you excited, it might not be the profession for you. And again, I also have this concept taken, borrowed with pride from Bill Walsh, famous 49ers football coach. He has this concept of like the score takes care of itself, right? And I think if you're okay to come in, apply the fundamentals consistently, to make someone else's situation better, if that gets you going, then this is the long-term play for you. If you're coming in to hit a number and make money, it's probably not the long-term profession for you. You can make a lot of money in a lot of different career paths.
Yeah, I agree. And what's one thing that sales leaders should start doing now that will support them in building stronger, more credible teams in the eyes of the customer?
Hone in on what they're actually trying to achieve. Like, what's the purpose of a salesperson, right? It's not independently for that company's growth, their employers, but it is, again, to grow the product, add value through that product or service, like I keep saying. And I think as a sales leader, to kind of reinforce the fundamentals and reinforce bad days happen, right? It's always kind of gut wrenching whenever I see one of our sales rep has one bad day. It's like, they're kicking themselves over it. And great, I love the enthusiasm, but you can't let that transpire into the next day, right? You got to learn how to cut that off and move on, right? It's like Ted Lasso, like be a goldfish, right? Forget about it. And letting as a leader, really showing that it's okay, right? Like it's okay to miss a day, to miss 2 days, but then also supporting them to say, okay, let's look at your activity log, get into the trenches with them and really understand what is leading to this potential shortfall. In some cases, that's outside of their control. Other cases, all right, if we were to increase our output through these different channels, it's likely that you're going to see an increase in conversion and better results, get you back on track. But really, rather than just pointing the finger at them and just kind of scolding them on what they're doing, look under the hood and really try to provide that additional level of support to figure out what is happening and how can you as a leader support them to get back on track, right? And to pull themselves back up and move forward. I'd say those would be the main things.
Yeah. And I think as well that curiosity is infectious, right? When your leader takes the time, is curious, is wanting to support you and understand what's going on, it sort of breeds that into the approach of the salesperson, I would say, and they're going to replicate that approach in their customer facing conversations, right? Really just sit and try and truly understand what is happening so that they can then make recommendations about what a potential solution might look like.
Yeah. I think if you get reps that are selling out of fear, that's where you get into that, again, differentiation. A sales rep will sell out of fear.
Yeah.
Because all they're going to look at is putting a number on the board so that their boss doesn't yell at them, right? Versus a sales professional will probably take it upon themselves and just, hopefully they have that environment where they can go speak to their manager and say, I'm struggling. Like, here's everything I'm doing. What would you suggest? This is a team effort, right? But yeah, I think that encouragement piece is something that, it is the leader's responsibility to ensure that that's constant.
It's been a really insightful conversation. I do have one final question for you. What would you say to someone that's very early in their sales career who is aspiring to be a true sales professional?
Focus on the fundamentals of sales and don't overthink frameworks. Don't overthink, objection handling. I think if you enter in every conversation and you have a kind of, let's say, a blueprint in your mind on how you're going to handle it, and it goes awry, don't panic. I think somebody that does want to make this a long-term play needs to understand that there will be a lot of no's, there will be a lot of rejection, and that's okay. You just need to know it's part of it, right? And again, it's like golf. Every bad hole, you have another opportunity to redeem yourself. Sales, every bad phone call, you have another opportunity to redeem yourself. Yeah. And just educate them more on the journey behind becoming a sales professional, and don't hone in on, well, if you miss a month, good luck. It's, again, the score will take care of itself. If you focus on the fundamentals, you approach the days with the right mindset, and you let criticism and rejection kind of roll off your back, because it's not personal. It's not directed at you. So I'd probably say keep those main things in mind, and you're in a better position than most to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Brett, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
It has been. If people wanted to follow you, connect, I guess LinkedIn's probably the best place, right?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is the best place to connect. Admittedly, I'm not as active on there as I'd like to be, but I'm making a conscious effort for the remainder of the year to do that. But LinkedIn would be the best place, definitely.
Brilliant. Brett, thank you again. And to everyone listening, until next time. Next week on the ISP podcast.
I made and sold clothes in what was called the rag market in Birmingham. As sales leaders, a lot of the time, we're trying to fix, we're trying to tell, trying to get that order sorted. It's quite hard to take a back seat and slow it down. You slow it down and you'll speed up the result.